As we gather here for the university's Black History program, we acknowledge that the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater exists today on the traditional lands of many Native people. We welcome the duty and opportunity to share stewardship of these lands. While this state institution has a rich history, for thousands of years, this region and these lands were home to a diverse Native peoples. In the knowledge and understanding of this history, we acknowledge that the land on which the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater now exists was and remains the historic and traditional territory of many Native people. The Ho-Chunk grew corn and gathered a living from these lands. The Potawatomi, then closely related to the Ojibwa and Odawa peoples, called this land home as well. We welcome and are honored by the responsibility to be good stewards of these lands and good neighbors to all Wisconsin indigenous populations. In concert with the Native American Cultural Awareness Association, faculty and staff, the university continues to explore durable and meaningful ways of acknowledging our relationship. We recognize these great Native nations and respect their sovereignties, and are thankful to be positioned in such prominent, historic, and meaningful landscapes as we continue to provide educational opportunities for all whom the university serves. This is our land acknowledgement statement that we will read at our events. As many of you know, last week we suffered a blow for the University of Wisconsin at Whitewater, and we lost one of the pillars of our institution, Dr. Roger Pulliam. And so at this moment, we want to pause and have a moment of silence in honor and respect for the life and legacy of Dr. Roger Pulliam. Thank you. At this time, I would like to bring to our stage our interim provost and executive vice chancellor, Dr. Greg Cook, for our welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Yarbrough. Welcome, everyone, to this event to celebrate Black History Month. It's our pride and honor to host this event and welcome our special guests and visitors, as well as everyone who's here from our UW-Whitewater and our larger community. I first want to take a moment to thank Dr. Yarbrough and his staff and colleagues for their leadership and their hard work in organizing this event today. Let's all give a hand to Dr. Yarbrough. As I reflect on what Black history means to me as an educator, I can't help but reflect on the progress that's been made in opening the doors of access for people of all colors and all backgrounds. Now, I'm known around campus as Dr. Cook, but some of you may also know me by my pseudonym, which is Dr. Leap, okay? Some of you, I said, maybe not everyone. So why am I sometimes referred to as Dr. Leap? Well, LEAP stands for Liberal Education in America's Promise, and it's a national initiative. And I was really attracted to this national initiative over a decade ago, initially because of its value of inclusiveness. That's what really drew me to liberal education and America's promise, and I emphasize that last part, America's promise. And I wanted to just share with you a quote from AACNU, which is the national organization that sponsors LEAP, and it really sums up the meaning of LEAP to me. LEAP challenges the traditional practice of providing liberal education, which is a really valuable type of education, to some students, and then narrow training to other students. LEAP engages the public with core questions about what really matters in college It connects employers and educational leaders as they make the case for the importance of liberal education in the global economy and in our diverse democracy. And it helps all students achieve the essential learning outcomes. Through LEAP, AAC&U calls on the United States to make excellence inclusive so that all students receive the best and most powerful preparation for work, life, and citizenship. Now, also, if you are familiar with the LEAP framework, it includes a list of principles of excellence that universities should follow. And the very first principle of excellence in the LEAP framework is to aim high for all students, and make excellence inclusive. Now, each January, AAC&U holds its annual meeting, and this year it was in Washington, D.C., and of course it's in the middle or end of January, so that's a good time to travel away from Wisconsin. But I also make sure I go to the AAC&U annual meeting because every year I just need to get my fix or my booster shot on LEAP, and so I went to this year's annual meeting, and I got to say that I was so genuinely impressed this year that the most consistent slogan at the meeting, and it was repeated time after time after time at the meeting this year in Washington, D.C., was this. This is the slogan: no institution can be excellent if it's not inclusive. And I think that's a good reminder for us all, for any institution. Now, since this is Black History Month, I also felt inspired to review some of the great ideas and quotes from Black leaders from the past. And I just settled on a couple of very short quotes from Ms. Rosa Parks, and I just want to share those with you because I feel like they speak to the value of education. And I also feel like, I'm a little biased, but I feel like if Ms. Parks could be with us here today, I'm pretty confident that she would be proud to be a Leapster. So here's one thing that Ms. Rosa Parks said. She said, "There is no future without education." And then she also said, "I see the energy of young people as a real force for positive change." Now, when I put those two together, it's those kind of sentiments that keep me energized as an educator and help me maintain my faith in an ever-improving future. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost Cook. At this time, I would like to bring the Dean of the College of Arts and Communication, Dr. Eileen Hayes, as she introduces Lift Every Voice and Sing, and the choir that will lead us in that rendition.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are thrilled and honored to have our UWW singers with us today. We have a combined choir. We have the Sirens, which is our women choir, with the Meister Singers, which is our chamber music groups. We're thrilled to have them under the direction of Professor Robert Garenbeck. I just wanted to say a few words about Lift Every Voice and Sing. You might already be aware that the song originated as a poem by James Weldon Johnson. He wrote the poem in 1899. And then in 1905, his brother, J. Rosamond Johnson, set the poem to music. Now, I just wanted to also mention that the poem's first oral presentation was in 1900 when James Weldon Johnson wrote the poem and presented it at a local elementary school because the school was being visited by Booker T. Washington, one of the greatest orators of the 20th century. So isn't it apropos that they were visited by Booker T. Washington and we are visited by Lieutenant Governor Barnes? It's fabulous. Then in 1905, John Johnson set the words to music. In 1919, the NAACP dubbed the song the Negro National Anthem, and of course, we refer to it today often as the Black National Anthem. So protocol dictates that in the presentation of all national anthems, we stand. So would you join me in standing for Lift Every Voice and Sing?
Thank you, choir, for that riveting rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing. I'd like to bring to the stage now a young lady who I taught last semester in our new student seminar, and she's one of our most promising freshmen, to give us a spoken word performance. Ladies and gentlemen, Nia Mooney.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, as Dr. Yarbrough said, my name is Nia Mooney. I'm a freshman here at UW-Whitewater, and this poem does not have a title. I almost cried while doing my homework the other day. The words on the page seemed to be mocking my body, my people, and my womanhood. I was so triggered that I'd rather be watching Central Park 5 than to be sitting in the Wells computer lab shackled to my seat. Now I know what a black body feels like when the police is present, or when another black girl is labeled as runaway instead of missing. When the Walmart employee is trying to memorize my footsteps as if my skin didn't already match the stereotypes that's going through their head. My homework read that during slavery, black women were only seen as breeders with no rights to their bodies. They received no leave of absence after carrying new life in their wombs for 9 months. Their breasts were full of fatty acids and sustenance, but their newborns lay at the end of the cotton roll or on their backs. No one had any sympathy for the bleeding mothers that were sometimes beaten into labor. I am so honored to come from such resilience. The women in my bloodline fought in rebellions alongside men, led hundreds of slaves to salvation, created spaces of sanctuary in a world that only saw them as profit and less as people. I hope my ancestors are listening to this poem. I wonder if they can feel their spirits dancing through the stanzas. I hope their faces are glowing like the North Star. This moment right here is what they fought for, and I intend on making them proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Nia. In August of 2019, the Board of Regents, along with President Ray Cross, selected our next chancellor, Dr. Dwight C. Watson. He has been on our campus since August, and he has tried to instill a sense of camaraderie, a sense of stability, and a sense of family for our university community. It is with great pleasure now that I introduce the 17th Chancellor of the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater and the first African-American male to be the Chancellor of UW-Whitewater, Dr. Dwight Watson.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome, Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. We're so glad that you're here. Good evening and welcome to the audience as well. I'm Chancellor Dwight C. Watson, and I'm humbled and honored to be your 17th Chancellor of this luxurious and legacy university. We strive to affirm diversity in all forms, and Black History Month is a seminal national celebration that aligns with our intent. It is important that we take the time to remember those who have come before us and pave the path forward, because in order to launch the future, we must honor the past. I know this campus to be a place where all people belong, all people are celebrated, and all are embraced for their inherent value. The campus values speak to those truths about UW-Whitewater. Let me remind you of the 6 values, which are collaboration, diversity and opportunity, integrity, learning and academic excellence, service and social responsibility, and shared governance. You may have heard me say this before, but I want these values to not only be posted on the walls, but to also walk the halls. This evening, you chose to be here in celebration of diversity and opportunity, one of our most sacred values, as well as service and social responsibility. I do know that our speaker represents both of those values, as well as integrity, and we are looking forward to hearing his speech. I want to thank you all for being Warhawks who live by our values. This evening, this event acknowledges Black History Month. As a community, we pause to recognize the contributions that African Americans have made not only to Black history, but also to American history. Our theme, focusing on the progress, tells us that indeed progress has been made, but we still have much to do and a long journey ahead. We are truly honored to have Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes join us this evening. Lieutenant Barnes is the first African American to serve the great state of Wisconsin as the Lieutenant Governor. I believe that Lieutenant Barnes lives a life of service and social responsibility. Let me tell you a bit about this background. He was born in Milwaukee and is the only child of a United Auto Workers member and a union activist and a public school teacher. I'm going to repeat this, and a public school teacher, since I was a public school teacher as well. He skipped 2 grades of elementary school and graduated from Milwaukee Marshall High School at age 16. Can we get some snaps for that, please? He went on to Alabama A&M University. He worked for various political campaigns and in the office of the Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett, eventually becoming an organizer for Milwaukee Inner City Congregations Allied for Hope, a Milwaukee-based interfaith coalition that advocates for social justice. He also worked for the State Innovation Exchange, a national progressive public policy organization. In 2012, at the age of 25, Lieutenant Governor Barnes was elected to the Wisconsin State Assembly, where he served 2 two-year terms. His tenure in the State Assembly included serving as chair of the Legislative Black and Latino Caucus and becoming a recognized leader on progressive economic policies and gun violence prevention legislation. In his current role, Lieutenant Governor Barnes used a platform of sustainability and equity to fight for solutions that invest in opportunities and fairness for every child, person, and family in Wisconsin, regardless of zip code. Before I ask Lieutenant Governor Barnes to join us, I need to acknowledge that one of his key staffers is a war hawk. Earl Ames is well known to many of you, and he serves as the Lieutenant Governor's Director of Communications. We know he's in good hands. We know that the Lieutenant Governor is in good hands when he has a go-to and well-respected war hawk on his team. Please join me in welcoming Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes.
All right, thank you so much for the introduction. Let's give him one more round of applause. I want to thank you all so much for having me this evening as we celebrate Black History Month all across the state of Wisconsin, all across the nation, all across the world. It is an important time for us to remember that we need to remember this all the time. We need to think about Black history as we move forward because this is all of our history. There would be no American history, there would be no American president without the contributions of Black history all throughout our nation's founding. But again, it's very exciting to be here, and I want to take a second before I get into it as well to recognize Dr. Roger Pulliam. The slideshow showed I had a chance to get to meet him. Wish I had more opportunities to talk to him. I know that so many people who have or who were able to engage him, and I know that many of them were much better because of it, much better students, much better members of society, much more productive. My communications director, Earl Arms, who is a war hawk, used to tell me about Dr. Pulliam all the time, and wish we just had more time to interact. I wish we had more people like him. I can only think about what I would like my legacy to be, and I would want that to be one where I was always willing to pass down information and help the next person come up, because just because I'm the first Black person serving this office doesn't mean I want to be the last. Just because I'm at this office doesn't mean I don't want others to come ahead and do even more than become a lieutenant governor. Go ahead and be an actual governor, become a U.S. senator, become the president of the United States of America. And I want, if nothing else, to show that my election makes it abundantly clear that it's possible for you to go out and chase your dreams, especially as people will tell you no. Everybody will give you every reason why it won't happen, every reason why it can't happen. They always say it's impossible until it's done. So my advice to you is just go out there and do it. To Provost Cook, you mentioned one thing. You said no institution is excellent if it's not inclusive. I would like to add to that America cannot be great then or again until it is inclusive. And so that is and that's why it's important that we're here. just to talk about the contributions, especially in a state like Wisconsin, where we have some of the most extreme racial disparities. It's unfortunate, and it holds everybody back, whether you are in Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay, Racine, or whether you're in Hudson, or whether you're in La Crosse, whether you're in Viroqua. These issues that impact our most marginalized communities impacts everybody. It's no secret that we have the highest rate of black male incarceration. It may be a secret to some that we have the highest rate of Native American male incarceration. These are all interconnected issues that stem from a history of injustice, a history of inequality. And it's something that we have to work every day to combat, every day to work to dismantle this sort of system. And that's one reason why I decided to run for lieutenant governor. It was about opportunity. I was born and raised city in Milwaukee, graduated from Marshall High School. And a school like Marshall, not like many others, or not unlike many others in our public school system, is challenged. And it's not that the school building is inherently bad. There are other factors that go into students' education that we have to work to address. We also have to think about the rate of child poverty in Wisconsin. We have to think about access to quality and affordable health care. We have to look at environmental concerns, housing insecurity, food insecurity. And if our students aren't showing up to school on a level playing field, we can't expect them to just go on and perform miracles. Now, some people do, and I applaud them to no end. My hat goes off. But we understand that that's not reality. A lot of people play sports in college, but not everybody goes to the NBA. Not everybody goes to the NFL. And we have to understand that as government, we have to be there to support all of our children, make sure that everybody has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of your zip code, regardless of your income, regardless of your family's background. It is the understanding that you deserve a chance just to get ahead, and we have to do whatever we can to make that happen. So serving as lieutenant governor, it means so much when I get an invitation to speak at an event like this, because I get to talk about my personal experience. I get to talk about the Wisconsin experience. I get to talk about the unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in many regards, but I also get to talk about the historical context that shows us that we can get through this. And not only can we get through this, we'll get over this, and we'll be able to provide an example to so many other places across the country of how to get it right. If we're not optimistic about us digging ourselves up from these deep holes of disparity, it would be no point in me running for office. If I don't think that things can be better, I might as well just sit home. And I think the same goes for so many other people. So as we take this time to remember our history, specifically the bondage that took up nearly 250 years of our history in the United States. But from that bondage, we know came our fight for freedom. The freedom that finally came in Juneteenth, June 19th, 150 years ago, 150 plus years ago. But the fact is, if you look at the time that African Americans have been free in this country versus the time we've been in bondage, you got to stop to ask yourself, what does freedom really mean? What does equality really mean? And what does it mean to get us all back on that level playing field? Because if you hold a community of people behind for longer than they've been free, then we got to do a little more to repair this situation. We should be doing more as a nation to make sure that opportunity exists, especially in the zip codes that have been challenged. Like, I was born on 26 and Locust, and I like to tell people that because that's one of the most important parts of my story, because there are very limited expectations, unfortunately, that people have that come from communities like that. That's the heart of the 53206 zip code, our state's poorest, our nation's most incarcerated zip code. But having lived there, having still knowing people that live here, I know that it's a community full of talent, full of bright individuals, full of great people who all want to do the right thing, but unfortunately have been withheld from opportunity. But from us being free on paper, the fight for equality, the fight for equity continued throughout our country's history. It continues today, from Reconstruction to Jim Crow to the Civil Rights Movement to the Black Lives Matter movement of today. And I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge how that has played a significant role in the work that I do, and the work that I've chosen to do, and the issues that I've decided to take on as lieutenant governor. Addressing issues like the error of mass incarceration that has plagued our state, issues like voter suppression that we see both in our city and our states and across this country. But we know that our struggles have always brought out the best in us. The challenges have always made us rise to the occasion and prove our best selves where other people expected much less. You think about the sacrifices that laid the foundation for people like me to have a chance to serve in this capacity, to serve the great state of Wisconsin. People like Vel Phillips, who was before me, the very first African-American to serve in statewide elected office. Vel Phillips was a trailblazer. Vel Phillips was a friend of mine. If you don't know, please check out her history. And I know that if I didn't have a chance to know her and speak with her, that I wouldn't be able to stand in front of you today. But even before before Vel Phillips, we had people who blazed trails like Ezekiel Gillespie. And if you don't know Ezekiel Gillespie, do not feel bad at all. I was in my late 20s when I found out who Ezekiel Gillespie was. I wish that was something I learned in school. But Ezekiel Gillespie was a former slave. He purchased his own freedom. He was from Tennessee. He moved to Wisconsin. And in 1865, Ezekiel Gillespie said, I'm going to go vote. And in 1865, that's just something that wasn't going to happen with Ezekiel Gillespie being a black man. And not satisfied with that answer, he didn't give up. He didn't just go home. And he decided to vote at the insistence of a guy named Sherman Booth, who is going to be repeated later on in the speech. But Ezekiel Gillespie, who was undeterred, Ezekiel Gillespie, who was committed to exercising his right to vote, which he should have had just as any free person should have had in this state, let alone this nation, he decided to sue the elections board. And his case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And Ezekiel Gillespie won his court case. And in that court case, it then granted African-American men in the state of Wisconsin the right to vote. It was half right. We still need to bring women along. But the fact is, African-Americans in the state of Wisconsin then had the right to vote because of Ezekiel Gillespie's insistence. In the face of injustice, he would not be deterred. He would not be turned away. He would not go quietly in the night. But even before Ezekiel Gillespie, we had people like Joshua Glover. Now, Joshua Glover was an escaped slave. He sought refuge in Racine, Wisconsin. He was from Missouri. And his former slave owner discovered his whereabouts and obviously tried to use the Fugitive Slave Act to retrieve Joshua Glover, to bring him back to a life as a slave. But people surrounded Joshua Glover. And the same Sherman Booth that went to convince Ezekiel Gillespie that he should have the right to vote, once they found out where Joshua Glover was, they took him to jail. In Milwaukee, on the Cathedral Square, there's a historical marker right there. I encourage you to go check it out. If you're from Milwaukee or if you're in the area, please go check out that important part of our state's history. But they jailed him. And Sherman Booth on horseback joined about a couple hundred other people, and they stormed the jail cell. They broke Joshua Glover out of that jail cell, and they sent him on to freedom through the Underground Railroad to Canada. After that, Wisconsin became the very first state to declare the Fugitive Slave Act unconstitutional. So in the face of extreme injustice, we as a state have risen to the occasion, and I think that this is our moment revisited, where we look at the extreme issues and the extreme disparities, the segregation the hyper-segregation that we have, whether it's economic, whether it's in terms of education, healthcare. This is our moment to show the nation, to show the world that we can do the right thing. It's with their determination. People whose odds were far worse than mine have ever been, who were fed up, who had enough, who went out and made a difference. But the way they made a difference wasn't on their own. They organized. And I always like to remind people, none of this that I did was on my own. I'm so honored to serve in this position, but I will be lying to your face if I said that I did this on my own. It took a whole lot of people to make this possible, and for them, I'm forever grateful. It took a whole lot of organizing to make this possible. But it's with their energy, their determination, their spirit that I work for Wisconsin that provides opportunity for everybody. It's what compels me to organize and what compels me to do the right thing, from working to fight the impacts of climate change to making sure that all of us are counted in the upcoming census. I cannot stress this enough. Please make sure you are counted in the census. Voting is vitally important. We just had the spring primary Tuesday. We're going to have a spring general in April. We're going to have a fall primary in August, fall general in November. I do expect everybody in this room to vote in all those elections, but I also expect you all to please participate in the census. This is important to make sure that our state gets the resources that we need. It helps us paint a much better picture of who actually lives here, to help make sure that people aren't silenced, because if we aren't counted virtually, we don't count. And I'm tired of not counting. And I think there are so many other people in this room who are tired of not counting. We want our voices heard. We want to be recognized. We want to be valued. So please make sure you do that. But as Lieutenant Governor, my focus has been on the core issues of equity and sustainability. First, recognizing that climate change is a real thing. Second, recognizing that climate change impacts communities of color 10 times worse than anybody else. And over the last year, with that in mind, I've been committed to making sure that we employ more sustainable practices here in Wisconsin, making sure that we bring voices to the table that have typically been ignored, the voices who've been at the forefront of some of the worst catastrophic events, and making sure that they have a voice. And as we see communities of color feeling these impacts, that comes in, it reveals itself in many ways, from polluted air to lead poisoned water. And through this task force that the governor created and chose me to serve as chair, we're making sure that communities aren't only a part of the conversation, but that communities are a part of the solution. I've been in so many meetings, and this is why it's so important that during Black History Month we think about who sits at the table. Because I've been in a lot of meetings where the people who need to be at the table aren't at the table. I've been in meetings where we talk about poverty and everybody seems to be doing all right. That's a problem. I've been in meetings where we talk about homelessness. Nobody's ever experienced homelessness. I've been in meetings where we talk about addiction. Nobody's ever experienced addiction. I've been in meetings where we talk about gun violence. Nobody's ever experienced gun violence. We could not find ourselves more far from the solution if that's the way we're going to go about solving these crises. So when we talk about anything that impacts any community, we have to make sure that that community is present, because that's how we ultimately find the most equitable solution, the true solution, because those perspectives can't be ignored. Those perspectives have been ignored, and these could be some of the most well-intentioned people, but it's not going to get you where you need to be. And we know that people, their health and safety shouldn't bear the burden of ignorance and greed, which has been the case for far too long. We know that the youngest people among us in our society, our children, deserve the opportunity to go ahead and do great things, and their future shouldn't be jeopardized because of poor decision making. And we know that we can't achieve true social justice until we achieve environmental justice. And the impacts that the climate has on our health care brings me to another point. Because people shouldn't have their health disregarded. And a top priority of our administration is make sure that people have access to quality and affordable health care, regardless of their race, their zip code, their income, their gender, how they identify. And we know that so many systemic barriers are put in place that keep people from getting the health care that they deserve. As our state faces a Black infant mortality crisis, our administration is committed to making sure that we work to reduce and ultimately eliminate the disparities that Black women and Black communities face all across Wisconsin. This is our moment to step up to be a leader, but as I said, I don't do any of this on my own. That's why we need your voices. We need you all to be present in this fight. We need you to stand along with us to make this a reality, to change Wisconsin that has been recognized as one of the worst places to raise a Black family, to make it one of the best places to raise a Black family. That's the reason why my grandfather moved to Wisconsin after serving in World War II. It was the place to be for Black people moving from the South. But through deindustrialization, automation, so many other factors, racism, redlining, we lost that place. We lost our footing. But I know that we can get it back. We know that we can provide access to healthcare. We know that we can provide solid education to our students. And that takes a lot of work to do. None of this is easy. We wouldn't do it if it was easy. We wouldn't have to do it if it was easy. And we know that the work that we do with the experiences of so many people amongst us that has to be reflected in all our work, this means our schools deserve the best because our children deserve the best. That means the best teachers. And unfortunately, teachers are leaving the profession at alarming rates, younger teachers. We need more teachers of color. We need more culturally relevant curricula in our school. We need engaging content. As our children are so easily influenced by so many other factors, our schools should be a place that we can rely on to be able to provide them all the information they need to go on and live happy, healthy, and productive lives. And life outside of school. We have to make sure that that walk to and from school is a safe walk. We have to make sure that when a student goes home to do homework, that they're going to have the support that they need to get that homework done. We need to make sure that our students are free and safe from gun violence, free and safe from sexual violence, free and safe from so many other barriers that have an impact on their education. And that's why it takes a community. It literally takes a village to raise a child, and that's why I've been a strong proponent of the community school model, to make sure that we are looking at well-rounded, holistic education for our students and making sure that we address poverty and attack it like the crisis that it is. We need to have a war on poverty, not a war on poor people. And we know that we also know that a lack of investment has led to overcrowded classrooms. And as long as school funding is based on property taxes, we are going to be in a system of inequality forever. That just literally means that students in the lower income school districts are going to be the most under-resourced. And that's not fair. And so high quality childcare, preschool programs are all also part of the mix, all things we have to make sure that we add to add value to a person's educational journey. And in addition, we know that the research shows that investment in high-quality early child care and education appear to reduce future crime and are more cost-effective than additional spending on police and incarceration. Since the turn of the century, the state of Wisconsin started spending more on our prison system than the university system. And that is a priorities mismatch. That is a values mismatch. And it has been a result of decades, a generation of backwards thinking that we have to work to reverse. And so in addition to reforming the criminal justice system, we need to make sure that we end the overuse of our correctional system. And you look across the country, you see people becoming millionaires. I actually get very upset when I see any article that shows how somebody made $1 million off weed, because we have been exposed to, and we see so many people who are still sitting behind bars for a marijuana offense, for nonviolent offenses. And that also is, marijuana legalization is something I support. However, it has to be a just form of legalization. That means that if you have a sentence that is a nonviolent marijuana offense, you should have that sentence commuted. You should be first in line for a job in the marijuana industry if you got a marijuana offense, because you got the skill set. It's already there. Let's put you to work. And I used to talk a lot about, because the governor put medical marijuana in the state budget last year, and the Speaker of the Assembly, who actually owns some properties around here, hope you don't live in one, but the Speaker of the Assembly owns some properties around here, and he said it was a poison pill. He said that medical marijuana was a poison pill, and it couldn't be more off base, because the real poison pills, as we know, are the pills that are being pumped into communities legally. The pills that have people hooked, the pills that are destroying communities, tearing families apart, tearing neighborhoods apart. And I'd say, well, you look at states that have recreational marijuana, you see reduced opioid epidemic, you see reduced use of other substances that have had people hooked and have taken the lives of so many folks. And I also tell people that in states with recreational marijuana, you don't see families being torn apart, you see them probably coming together in some instances. This is a Black History speech, not a weed speech, so forgive me. But it's about criminal justice. It's about families. It's about making sure that we make communities whole. It's about making sure that we learn from the mistakes and grow and become better. This is what we have to do. I mean, this is for the future of not our individual selves. It's for the future of our nation. And, Governor Evers also, I got to give him credit here, too, because he issued the first pardons in over 9 years. People who have made mistakes in their lives. A lot of people make mistakes, believe it or not. And the fact is, I do believe in the power of rehabilitation. I do believe that people learn from their mistakes, learn from their sentences, but unfortunately, they're still withheld from opportunity. It's still increasingly difficult to get certain jobs if you have a criminal record. And so far, the governor has granted 22 pardons, and I'm serving on the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. He has appointed a good friend of mine, John Tate II, to be the chair of the Pardons Board. And that's just a first step. 22 may sound like a very low number, but you got to understand that we're starting from scratch. This is a process that had not been put into play for the last 8-9 years. So we are just getting started to making sure that we achieve true criminal justice reform here in the state of Wisconsin, to make Wisconsin a national model, taking everything that was wrong and working to make it right. And all this work that we do, whether it's for the environment, whether it's education, is to make sure that we promote an economy that works for everybody. Far too many people have been left behind. I could easily say that, or benefit politically from talking about a low unemployment rate, but that would be disingenuous. Because I know much better. I know that there are still far too many people who are working much more for much less. We still know that there are people working 40 hours a week who struggle to put food on the table. And during the Decade Challenge back in December, when people put pictures of themselves from 2009, 2019, A buddy of mine put a picture of the minimum wage from 2009 and 2019. It was the exact same, $7.25. But the cost of goods and services continues to rise and rise, which means that people are actually making less money than they made in 2009, while some people are experiencing incredible wealth. Some are running for president and spending a whole lot of money. I forget how much Mike Bloomberg has spent so far. And this is not like an indictment on his campaign or anything. Don't get me wrong. That's another speech for another day. But the fact is, he spent upwards of $1 billion, right, and on his campaign. And for another buddy of mine did the math and said that's like the median household spending $350. It is hard to even imagine that level of wealth. But it exists while people still live in abject poverty amongst us. And this system of inequality is unfortunate because it does not bode well for a sustainable future for us, especially as we lose jobs to automation, especially as jobs are shipped overseas. We know who's going to pay the price. It's the same people who paid the price throughout our nation's entire history. Unfortunately, they are people of color. They are black people in neighborhoods all across America who've been dealt the short end of the stick since we've been here. And last year, we celebrated 400 years since you could use celebrate, but we acknowledged the 400-year anniversary of the unwilling, unlawful arrival of enslaved Africans in Jamestown, Virginia. And we know that in that 400 years, we're still waiting for our moment for America to be great. We still don't comprehend that kind of campaign slogan because it's meaningless to us as a community. It's meaningless to us as a race. However, I still do believe that better is possible. I still do believe that we can get to that place. I don't believe in what's going on right now. I don't believe in the president we have right now, but I do believe that we can be much better if we come together and we organize, when we express ourselves, when we talk about issues, when we challenge the system. And that's one thing I always like to leave people with. Don't be afraid to challenge the system. Hold people accountable. Voting is one thing, but look at what people do after they're in office. Pay attention to it. Don't be afraid to call somebody out, especially as they do the wrong thing, especially as things have increasingly negative impacts on communities. And so I want to leave everybody with, because I talked about the census, I talked about voting. I want to leave people just with the importance and the urgency of the moment that we're in. We haven't seen a time quite like this in so many different regards. We haven't seen we haven't seen the connectedness that we have right now, the ease of transformation of information, how we can connect with one another. And that's a double-edged sword. But I implore everybody in this room to use it for good. Social media I'm only on Twitter and Instagram these days, but social media is something that we have an opportunity to harness that power, harness that energy to create a revolution, the kind of revolution that we need that provides opportunity for folks. And when you go vote, in the primaries, in the general, vote your values, vote your heart. People need to know. People need to be able to respond to our communities, especially as our communities change. People have to listen to us. And I think that if nothing else, the 2016 election showed that you don't show up, we ain't gonna show up. And I don't know if enough politicians get that message. I don't know if enough people understand that, voting is something that we should do. It's not something that we have to do. I want you to vote in every election. Please, please, please vote for every election. Even if you don't vote for me, I would love it if you do. But please show up. But understand that we have options. And we have to start acting like we have options. And candidates and when I say we, I mean we as candidates have to start acting like people have options. Because for far too long, we know that people have been ignored. And we know that this failed system, this failed economic system, has not been much good for people of color, has not been much good for black people. We have the second lowest rate of black home ownership in the entire country in Milwaukee. So many other disturbing and startling factors. But that is also why we're working to make sure, one, raising the minimum wage. I mean, that's basic. But two, making sure that our disadvantaged businesses, our minority businesses have access to capital so that if you have a good idea, you can go out there and make it a reality. Making sure that people have access to health care because there are so many bright minds, so many people with really good ideas who would love to start a small business who can't because the cost of healthcare is too much. It's too much uncertainty out there. And so it is our job to close those gaps, but it's your job as students, because I'm not letting y'all off the hook. Y'all have a lot of work to do, because anything, like I said before, can't do on my own, but the people I need are you. You know, the power has always been in the youth. Any large-scale social movement throughout our nation's history has been led by young people. It's been led by people in this room who look like you. It's been led by people in the room your age. And so the time is now for you to step up into your greatness, to step up into a position of leadership, to make this world reflect your values, to achieve the America that we all want to see, to make Wisconsin a state where everybody has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of your race, sexual orientation, regardless of your ability, regardless of your gender, regardless of how you identify. You have the power and the ability to step up and lead this next wave of civil rights. We are in a new era right now where the rule of law is being ignored at the federal level, but it doesn't matter because we still have people power. You still have the ability to rise up and step up and just say no. We don't have to take it. And that's ultimately been that has been the catalyst for any sort of social change that we've seen. People who've just been fed up enough and said no, whether it was Rosa Parks, whether it's Martin Luther King, anybody throughout our history who's made the most significant changes. So with that being said, I will be at the state capitol. We're traveling across the state. We had a chance to get to all 72 counties last year, and people always ask, what do you talk about when you go up north? And I'm like, well, you know, what do you talk about when you get, what do you talk about when you get past Highway 29? What do you talk about when the state runs out of black people? I tell them that I will talk about the same exact things in all four corners of Wisconsin, all 72 counties, because we all want a certain quality of life. And as we celebrate this Black History Month, I want this to be a moment where we think about how these contributions impact our everyday lives for all 11 months. If you're not black, I want you to think about how Black history has impacted you, how your life has been improved greatly because of Black history, and how we can support this next wave of civil rights that I talked about, how we can support up-and-coming leaders, how we can support anybody who's been marginalized, how we can make this a place for everybody that's full of opportunity, full of hope. And November is a big month for us all, and we don't have to settle for hate, racism, xenophobia, even if it's coming from the White House. Thank you so much for having me. And we do have time for a couple questions also. Oh, all the way in the back. Mm-hmm.
Next Gen America. So I don't know if you remember, but last time when you had a guest speaker presentation with your brothers at Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, I asked a question regarding the lead epidemic in the Milwaukee inner cities.
Wait, you said a question regarding what again?
The lead epidemic in Milwaukee inner cities.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as progress goes or initiation to relieve the epidemic, how has that gone so far?
Yes, good question. The governor put the governor proposed $40 million in the state budget, and that got taken out because they said that too much of the money was going to Milwaukee. And you know who said that? It's the guy that owns property here in Whitewater, Speaker of the Assembly. And so if he can't take care of his own stuff, you can't trust to take care of homes in Milwaukee, which is unfortunate. You know, this is a battle that we've been up against for a long time, and it's not even like this isn't even political speech. I don't care what party you're in. If you said no to working to remove these lead laterals in communities that are impacting children, it doesn't matter what party you're in. You are doing the wrong thing. You know, that is totally that's totally unacceptable. We're talking about children's cognitive ability being impacted. We're talking about the ability for children to learn simply because they drank water, the same water they need to survive, right? Things that in the wealthiest nation in this world we should come to just expect. Clean water. It's not like these people, dug their own laterals and decided to put lead in there. Like this was a misstep by government. We should work to remediate it. And the cost, even to replace the $40 million, yes, is a lot of money. However, that's an investment that we have to make. for a healthy society, for healthy communities, and for a healthy society. And that's one of the more frustrating parts is how the legislature is right now and how the maps are drawn. It allows people to engage in some very poor decision making and issues that are wildly popular, like Medicaid expansion, marijuana legalization, universal background checks for firearms. Those pieces of legislation do not get to see the light of day because they are being roadblocked by this legislature. And that $40 million that would have gone, and that wasn't even $40 million just from Milwaukee, it's $40 million statewide. Of course, a bulk of it would have gone to Milwaukee because that's where the population is. That's where the bulk of the lead laterals are. But there are other places like Green Bay, Sheboygan, if I'm not mistaken, Wausau, Racine and Kenosha that also have issues with lead laterals. And they said no. And when I say hold people accountable, thank you for asking that question because you asked me that before. I said we're going to do something about it. And we tried to do something about it. And it's important for us to not just know who's saying yes to our issues. It's important for us to know who's saying no to our issues. Don't be shy now.
Hello, I'm Ari. First of all, I want to say thank you for coming out here. Your speech was very inspirational. One of the questions I had is what expectations have you set for yourself and that you've also executed and that you're going to execute?
That's a good one. Expectations I set for myself. One was getting elected. That was just a huge undertaking, right? It's sort of intimidating. Even my very first race when I ran for state representative in 2012, it was still intimidating to go out there, put my name on the ballot, and to knock on doors and get soundly rejected by people sometimes, right? To get doors shut in your face. So I'll say getting elected was the first one. But the work that we're engaged in on climate, as it relates to climate change, is probably been the biggest thing for me. Because I came in talking about the need for us to make sure that we are working to stave off the impacts of climate change and also create a clean energy economy in the state. And the governor, again, like I said, chose me to be the chair of our climate change task force. That task force is going to come up with a list of recommendations in August for the governor's 2021 budget. Also, we'll have a set of recommendations for our state agencies and standalone legislation as well. So that's the big undertaking for me now, and that requires doing a whole lot of visits to a whole lot of places. That's the thing too about this job. There's so many different opportunities. I do a lot of things I would have never done before. I find myself in a lot of spaces I would have never been before, but I think a lot of that helps us build bridges. When I show up at a farm, it might be a little bit different, but it's about going there and people who have been told or have this preconceived notion about some young black dude from Milwaukee, right? Or that avatar in general, not just me, but that avatar in general. When I get to show up and I have a chance to engage in conversations with a lot of these folks, I'm one by one. All right, I can't do it all on my own, but one by one, we are working to try to bridge a lot of divides here in the state. And the same thing can be said too, like Earl, who's the communications director. When he travels with me, we do our best. And it's not gonna be go out there and just try to appease people or try to prove that we're these harmless beings. We go there and we're ourselves. Half the time we're just cracking jokes, just being funny, and you relate to people. I see over here. Yeah.
Hello. Thank you. My name is Neil McCants. My question would be what are the biggest problems you think in the African American community, and what are the solutions to solve those issues?
Yep. Biggest ones, like I mentioned before, I would say the top three would be economy, health, and criminal justice reform. You don't just get the highest rate of black male incarceration from nothing. That happens as a result of some very unjust sentencing practices that the nation began to engage in during Ronald Reagan era, right? And it's not like Wisconsin the only place that suffers from it. Like a lot of other places do. We just have it really, really bad. And healthcare disparities that we have. I mentioned black infant mortality, and lack of access to healthcare is huge. And I know you've like seen the stories before where people have been in an ambulance, and the ambulance got turned away at the hospital, and you see those stories, those people end up dying, and that should never happen. Like trust me, like I said, there is more than enough money to make sure that that should never be the case in this nation. And the economic piece, I think it ties into so much more because communities are economically disadvantaged, deal with so many other issues as a result that impacts education, that impacts the healthcare, impacts food security, impacts housing security and insecurity. And things were different. We had one of the strongest black middle classes in the entire country for a couple decades, actually. And when jobs went overseas, when we saw jobs being lost to automation, it took entire communities and neighborhoods along with it, and we've never bounced back from that. And that's why I think that I will put the economic piece on top of everything, because we got to get this state on economic footing. And like I said, it starts with raising the minimum wage, but that's baseline. That's the biggest thing we could do, but it also takes our business community to step up and pay people what they're worth. There are like about 6 million people right now that work for a Fortune 500 company that don't earn a living wage across this country. People whose blood, sweat, and tears go into making companies large, huge, incredible sized profits, but they don't get to share in that prosperity. And I don't think that's fair. I think most people will be able to agree. And I think the biggest myth that folks have been told is that they just don't work hard enough. And I mean, if you go to work anywhere for 40 hours a week, you work hard enough. And I always say, too, that, I think that is a deflection, because I never seen a billionaire with arthritis, never saw a billionaire with a bad back. And that means that you're talking about the wrong people who aren't working hard enough, because my dad deals with carpal tunnel from his 30 years working on an assembly line. I know so many other people who are dealing with other health issues because they chose to go to work. Yeah, or.
Hi there, my name is Will Hans. My question is in regards to gerrymandering and redistricting. What do you see as a solution to this?
Yep.
And how it'll apply to Wisconsin?
Yep. The best solution would have been the courts to act when it came to gerrymandering. Our case went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court kicked it back down to the lower court, and now it's just in limbo. And it is my gut feeling that the courts want to just leave it up to the next round of redistricting. They just want to wait until the next census is taken and the next maps are drawn, so they don't have to do anything with it. The governor did create the People's Maps Commission. That People's Maps Commission will be tasked with drawing our standalone set of maps. This is not going to be a commission of any political appointees, no political nobody who's in political office, no party officials. This will be a completely nonpartisan effort. And fortunately, governor has the veto pen, so he'll be able to veto a bad map that comes across his desk, but they are trying desperately to keep up gerrymandering. And I can just break it down in simple terms. We won every statewide office in 2018. And we came away with 36% of the seats in the state house. And I want to say the popular vote there was a little over 50%. Now, yes, the challenge there was there were more Democrats running in uncontested seats. Okay, sure, fair enough. But the fact is, that still doesn't account for such a disparity, 51% to 36%. There's something very wrong with the way that our maps are drawn, and that means that real issues don't get responded to. That means that the real concerns of the voting public, of the public in general, they don't get heard, as they should, because elected officials in the legislature only have to respond to a primary electorate. They don't have to respond to the needs of the majority of people in the state. And it's not good for democracy. It's not good for governing. I don't think Democrats should do it either, full disclosure.
Hi, my name is Kiana. I don't necessarily have a question as much as I just wanted to say something. I remember reading something a while ago about the correlation between mental health and African Americans as they become more educated, especially people who are getting college educated. And it's been shown that the more college educated a student of color becomes, the more that their mental health suffers because of, the uncommonly known truths that they learn. And I've personally definitely seen that in myself. And as you just learn about these policies that have been put into the institution of this country and the foundation of this country for hundreds of years, that's pure purposes have been to disadvantage people of color, it would just be out of pure ignorance and denial to say that those outcomes aren't generational and that they just go away and that we aren't still feeling those now. And it's hard to sometimes not feel hopeless and learning about all of these things. And I just wanted to say that your words and your actions have been really powerful, because it's one thing to have the knowledge, but you can't really do anything with the knowledge if you don't have the hope and the drive to act on them. So I just wanted to tell you that your words mean something, and they've helped giving me that drive again to make a difference. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm Ryan Coleman. As a non-Wisconsin resident, but someone who pays attention to the news that happens in Milwaukee area in Wisconsin, what steps do you think need to be changed in the justice system so that way that perception and that crime rate that happens in Wisconsin needs to be changed?
Yeah, some of the first immediate steps we can take as far as criminal justice reform is changing the way we sentence nonviolent offenders. Also making sure that, like you mentioned, mental health. Mental health is a crisis, and you shouldn't be in jail for it. It is a health issue. It's a health concern, and for far too long, people have been locked up who would be much better served in an institution that address mental health needs. And ultimately, when people go there and have those mental health issues unaddressed, it makes it worse. Makes a bad situation completely worse. You're throwing gasoline on the fire in that case if you put somebody in a prison. So with that being said, sentencing reform for nonviolent offenders, and also looking at recidivism. And we got a lot of people who go back to jail or go back to prison on revocations, not necessarily a new crime, but may have a technical violation, may have weed in the system, and you get a PO that says, all right, you're going back to jail. I want to say in 2016, there were 5,000 people or so who went back to prison on one of those revocations. And that's a price tag like $30,000 per person. And that means that we're spending, that's like $150 million to put people back in prison with no new crime. We could definitely spend that money in many other ways. I would rather pay for somebody just to go to work instead of sending them back to jail for $30,000 a year. I think that we have to be smarter with the way that we address criminal justice in this country, or definitely in this state, to provide opportunities for folks. This is not me saying this. This is the administration. The last question. I just want to make that clear now.
Sorry, I snatched it, but I just really, it's been on my mind for a minute. So, first off, I just like to say thank you for saying that you are a local, that you grew up in the environments, that you actually are not in the position to try to change. And I feel like majority of the problem regarding urban environments in Milwaukee specifically is that we have people who have these positions that are not from our environment, don't know much about our environment, but they have the accessibility and the power to determine the insurance of such environment. So how do we as a community collectively engage within our political rights and make sure that we have locals that are interested in getting these positions? Because until we have such power to determine what goes on in our own community instead of people who are not even from our community, I don't really think there's going to be much change in sight. I always try to tell people, majority of people who are police officers in Milwaukee, if you ask, they're not originally from Milwaukee, or judge or city council, things like that. They're not really from the Milwaukee area. So how do we get people from our community to want to be in such positions? to control our community like you did?
Run for office. Run for office. I'm telling you to run for office. That's what I'm doing right now. It's the only way you can be sure that somebody who explicitly represents what you stand for, your values, your experience, is to run for office. Like, I'm not even saying that being funny. All right? I'm being very serious in saying that. Because, look, bad people get elected all the time. You know, that's the reality of it. And I think that the system allows for that to happen. It allows for people to come in who have some outsized influence, who have more wealthy connections. It allows for them to thrive in this environment. However, when you look across the country now, there are more people who are stepping up and running for office. And these are people who are who they call unlikely candidates, but they're the most likely Americans. Right? They're the people you are most likely to run across at a grocery store in your everyday life. So why shouldn't they have a chance to represent you in the highest levels of government? And with that being said, nobody's going to represent you more than you do. And as people are stepping up, younger people, more diverse candidates, I think that there is a certain frustration that people have with the status quo. There's a certain frustration that people have with politics as it has been for as long as it's been, and people are organizing. Yeah, you can spend as much money as you want in an election, but if you don't out-organize, then it's sometimes it's not gonna work. I've lost an election before, but the fact is, you still have to understand that there's another day to keep fighting on, right? And it's easy for folks to lose a race and then give up and not want to do it, become disenchanted and think that the world is over. And it does feel that way. When I lost, I don't think I left the house for 30 days, but I had to pick myself back up at some point. It wasn't easy, but had I not lost that race, I wouldn't be here today in this position. So that is my long answer. The short answer, again, I would say run for office. Thank you.
Thank you. I got some presentations.
Okay. Let me sit here.
Yes. So can we give a big Warhawk welcome to our Lieutenant Governor for his presence on our campus on this evening. Now what I would like to invite the Whitewater Student Government President Alex Osterman, to come for a presidential proclamation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Osterman, and like Dr. Arbro said, I'm the president of the Whitewater Student Government. So I have this presidential proclamation here that I'm going to read through for you folks. So whereas the president of the Whitewater Student Government serves as the head of the shared governance on behalf of students at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. On January 7th, 2019, Mandela Barnes took office as the 45th Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin, and Lieutenant Governor Barnes served in the Wisconsin State Assembly from 2013 to 2017, representing District 11, and was the chairman of the legislator's Black and Latino Caucus. Lieutenant Governor Barnes is the first African American to hold the office of Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin, and on February 19th, 2020, today, Lieutenant Governor Barnes served as the keynote speaker for UW-Whitewater's Black History Month program. And now therefore it be proclaimed by the President of the Whitewater Student Government that Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Barnes be honored for his work in office, his support as the Black History keynote speaker at UW-Whitewater's 2020 Black History program, and for his work supporting his constituents across Wisconsin, especially UW system students. And therefore it be proclaimed that Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Barnes be considered an honorary Warhawk and be welcomed on the UW-Whitewater campus. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Barnes, for coming today.
One more. One more. At this time, we would like to bring the president of our Black Student Association, Ms. Amani Hall, and the secretary, Mr. Malik Abney, who is also a member of Kappa Alpha Psi.
I was going to say it if you didn't.
For a presentation.
Hello, everyone. As Dr. Yarbrough mentioned, I am the president of our Black Student Union, and my name is Amari Hall. You said Armani. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Go ahead. So the plaque here, it's beautiful. It says the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater recognizes Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes for services rendered as the 2020 Black History Month keynote speaker, focusing on progress. So.
The Lieutenant Governor will be staying around for a moment, and he will have a receiving line in the back to my immediate right. We also have refreshments that will be available for all to consume. We want to thank everyone for your attendance today. We want to especially thank our Chancellor's Cabinet for staying around and for welcoming our guests today. I also like to thank Miss Brittany Dickerson and Miss Nicole Kane for their work in pulling this event together. So thank you so much. We appreciate it, and please enjoy the rest of your evening.